My name is Madelyn Reese. I'm 36 years old, and at this very moment, I'm standing by the buffet table of Willow Crest Resort, watching my mother-in-law raise an eyebrow like I just failed a final exam. Madeline, she says sweetly but sharp enough to draw blood, I think you forgot the dressing again. She says it like it's a pattern, like I forget things often, like I'm one of the servers. I'm not. I'm an engineer. I spent the last decade designing control systems for high-speed rail networks across the western U.S. I've spoken at international transport summits, consulted for infrastructure reform, and led billion-dollar contracts. But to the Reese family, especially Darlene, I'm just Ben's wife. The quiet one. The one who works on computers or something. No one's ever really asked what I do, and I stopped volunteering the answer years ago. Every summer they gather at this exact resort tucked into the pines of Colorado, where the air smells like old money and entitlement. Crystal chandeliers, hand-carved fireplaces, linens folded like swans. They sip imported wines and talk about second homes like they're discussing the weather. I show up, smile politely, bring the salad, and try not to take it personally when no one remembers I don't eat pork, or that I already brought the dressing, or that I exist. But this year is different. This year I didn't just book a room, I bought the whole damn resort. They just don't know it yet. Last winter, the owners of Willow Crest quietly listed the property. I didn't hesitate. Through a holding company, Bluewood Ventures, I drained nearly all my liquidity and closed the deal. No fanfare, no announcement, just paperwork and a quiet grin. Now I'm here, in my clearance rack sundress and old heels, watching Lauren, Ben's sister, swirl her Chardonnay and complain about the valet. Ben's brother just asked me to grab extra napkins from the kitchen, because of course I looked like I was heading that way. I wasn't. But I went anyway, not because I'm passive, because I'm patient. Tomorrow night, the resort manager, Ethan, will announce new ownership during the annual guest gala. He'll say Bluewood Ventures acquired controlling interest. He'll thank the woman who made it all possible. And when they ask who that woman is, he'll point to me. I don't want revenge. Not really. I want something purer. I want them to see me, not just as Ben's wife or the girl who forgets dressing, but as the woman who owns the table they're sitting at. And when Darlene lifts her wine glass and says, as she always does, "Families like ours built this place," I'll be there, steady as ever, smiling. Because she's right. They built the illusion. I bought the reality. And I'm done being invisible. When Ben and I got married, I thought I'd finally found someone who saw me. Really saw me. He was brilliant in the quiet way, tenured at 35, published in journals I could barely pronounce. But more than that, he was kind. He opened doors, remembered coffee orders, and whispered affirmations during thunderstorms. I thought that would be enough. But Ben had a blind spot the size of Texas when it came to his family. The first time Darlene introduced me at a garden party, she said, "This is Ben's wife, Madeline. She does something technical with trains. Isn't that adorable?" I smiled, because what else was I supposed to do? At Thanksgiving, she'd lean across the table and ask if I'd ever considered taking a posture class, since engineers tend to slouch. At Christmas, I'd bring gifts tailored to each person, books, wine, even vintage records, and Darlene would hand me a scented candle and a diet cookbook with a wink. Still, I tried. I offered to plan Ben's dad's retirement party. I designed the invites, negotiated the catering, even arranged a slideshow tribute that made grown men cry. At the actual party, Ben's sister gave a toast and thanked every sibling and spouse by name. She even thanked the florist. She didn't mention me. Ben kissed my cheek and whispered, "You did most of this." But he didn't say a word to the rest of them. That was the moment I realized my contributions would always be invisible in their world. So I stopped trying to be seen. Instead, I built. I doubled down at work, took the ugliest, most complicated contracts no one else wanted. I learned budgets, negotiations, logistics. I earned bonuses and didn't upgrade a thing. Not my car, not my apartment, not even my shoes. I funneled everything into my own fund. Quiet, consistent, anonymous. 7 years ago, I made my first hotel investment, a tiny ski lodge in Oregon, then a boutique inn in Washington, then 3 more in California, always under different holding companies, always hands-off. It was never about the money, not really. It was about control, about owning something no one could dismiss. And then last summer, we were here. Same lake, same resort. Darlene made an offhand comment to a friend in the hallway. I heard it through the bathroom vent. She's harmless, sweet, but you can tell she'll never really be one of us. That broke something in me. Not because it was new, but because it was final. That night, I emailed a former colleague who had gone into real estate development. By the end of the week, we had a plan. 4 months later, Willow Crest was mine. They thought I was silent because I was small. But silence can be a strategy. And now, I'm done building quietly. To the Reese family, Willow Crest wasn't just a vacation spot. It was their legacy, their summer tradition, their playground. They acted like they owned the place, even when they didn't. Every year, they expected the same sweet upgrades, the same comped wine baskets, the same legacy family discount that had been quietly tacked onto their bill since the early 2000s. No one ever said thank you to the staff. No one tipped. They believed it was all owed to them because they'd been coming here for 20 years. And I used to let it slide. Used to. This morning, as I walked the resort grounds with Ethan, the manager, clipboard in hand, I could hear Ben's cousin Marcus loudly complaining at the front desk about the ID policy. "She knows me," he barked at the young woman behind the counter. "We come every year. I'm practically family here." The receptionist was firm but professional. "I understand, sir, but new policy requires all guests to show ID at check-in. It applies to everyone." Everyone. That word meant more to me than they could ever understand. Later, at brunch on the veranda, Darlene was in rare form. "The service here used to be impeccable," she sniffed, slicing into her eggs Benedict like it personally offended her. "Ever since they changed ownership, it's all gone downhill," Lauren chimed in. "Seriously, the new towels feel cheaper." "And have you noticed the valet doesn't even wear gloves anymore?" Haley added, like we were in Downton Abbey. I stirred my coffee and smiled. They had no idea that under my ownership, we'd upgraded the employee healthcare package, replaced mold-infested HVAC systems, installed water filtration at the lake, and raised staff wages by 15%. But all they noticed was the towels. That's the thing about people like them. They romanticize the past, even if it was rotting underneath. "Honestly," Lauren said, flipping her hair, "I miss when this place felt like family, not some faceless corporation." Ben nodded. "Yeah, I heard some holding company bought it out. No soul anymore, just rules." No soul. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. They were sitting on furniture I personally selected, in a building I legally owned, complaining about the ghost of me they couldn't see. I looked across the table at Ben. He hadn't once asked why I was walking the property at night, why I missed the pool parties, why I was always on my laptop during wine hour. Because it had never occurred to him that I could be the reason anything had changed, that I could be the soul. But tomorrow night the mask would drop. Tomorrow night the woman they'd overlooked, underestimated, and ignored would take the stage, and they'd realize this resort never belonged to them. It belonged to me. The dining room that evening looked like a catalog spread. String lights glowed above crisp white tablecloths. Crystal glasses sparkled. The wine flowed like it was blessed. Ben's mom had arranged everything, right down to the resort chic dress code, which, judging by the array of silk shawls and monogrammed cufflinks, really meant look rich, act richer. I wore a navy sheath dress I'd bought 2 winters ago on clearance, and the same nude heels I'd worn to my college graduation. Darlene glanced at me as I entered and offered a tight smile, the kind that evaluates you more than greets you. By the time the entrees were cleared, the conversation had circled back to its favorite topic: complaints. "Who renovates a pool deck in August?" Lauren asked, scandalized. "Honestly," Marcus added, "whoever's running this place clearly has no idea how hospitality works. Probably some tech bro who wanted to diversify." Darlene swirled her wine. "Well, I just hope the new owners understand that families like ours made this place what it is. We're not just customers. We're the reason this place has value." I stared at her. The certainty, the entitlement, the way she said it like it was a universal truth. My jaw clenched. Ben leaned over and whispered, "Maybe we should leave a review. Might help them get their act together." That's when something snapped, not out of rage, but precision, cold, clear clarity. I excused myself quietly, stepping out into the night air. The sky was dark velvet. The lake was still. I took out my phone and dialed Ethan. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, boss, you ready?" I looked through the windows at the laughing, clinking, oblivious crowd. "Do it," I said. "Announce it. Tonight, before dessert." "Copy that," he replied. I didn't go back in right away. I stood outside by the stone railing, letting the cool air settle the fire in my chest. Inside, I watched as Ethan stepped forward and gently tapped his glass. The room quieted. And just like that, everything began to change. I stood just outside the dining room doors, heart pounding in my chest like a drum roll that wouldn't end. Through the tall windows, I could see the Reese family leaning in as Ethan took center stage, his champagne flute raised. "As many of you know," he began, voice steady but warm, "Willow Crest has recently undergone an exciting transition. Tonight, it is my honor to introduce the new majority owner, the person who made every upgrade, every change, and every improvement possible." I stepped inside. He turned, gestured. "Please join me in recognizing Ms. Madelyn Reese." For 3 full seconds, there was nothing. No applause, no breath, just silence, thick, stunned, and beautiful. I walked slowly toward the head of the table, my heels echoing off the wooden floor. Every head turned, every jaw dropped. Lauren froze mid-bite, fork suspended. Marcus blinked like he'd been slapped. Darlene's wineglass tipped sideways, spilling Cabernet across the white linen, but she didn't even flinch. And Ben looked like he'd seen a ghost who'd bought the house. I stopped in front of them, let the quiet stretch just long enough to burn. Then I smiled. "You wanted to leave a review, Ben?" I said, calm and cool. "Feel free to forward it directly to me." You ever see a whole table freeze like they'd just been caught talking trash about the teacher, only to realize she was standing behind them the whole time? Multiply that by 10, add wine, stir in 20 years of entitlement. That was the dining hall. Ben's aunt choked on her lemon tart. Marcus dropped his phone. I think someone at the far end whispered, "Wait, her?" Yes, her. I didn't sit down. I walked to the microphone Ethan had left behind and picked it up with steady hands. "Good evening," I said, looking at each of them one by one. "I just want to thank you all for coming. Your continued support of Willow Crest has been noted, and from now on, honored the same way we honor all our guests." I let the implication hang there like a chandelier about to drop. No more legacy discounts, no backdoor bookings, no comps for being a Reese. Dead silence. I nodded once. "You're welcome to stay, just like everyone else." I handed the mic to the pianist and walked straight out of the room before anyone could recover enough to fake a smile. In the hallway, I finally exhaled, not in relief, in release. That was it. The moment I stopped shrinking, the moment they saw me, not as a wife, not as a tag-along, but as something undeniable. And the best part? I didn't need their approval to get there. I'd already arrived. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was anxious, because I didn't need to anymore. For the first time in 10 years, I wasn't waiting to be seen. I wasn't rehearsing ways to earn a place at their table. I wasn't swallowing my voice to keep the peace. I had taken the mic, said what needed to be said, and walked away. And the silence they gave me? That was all the applause I needed. I woke early before sunrise and took my coffee down to the lakefront dock. The sky was a soft lavender, mirrored perfectly in the still water. I sat cross-legged at the edge, toes brushing the cool wood, and thought about all the things I hadn't said over the years, all the dinners I cooked without thanks, all the times I was asked to help clean up while others sipped cocktails, all the times I was smiled at, dismissed, minimized, and told, "She's nice, but not quite polished." And Ben, sweet, well-meaning Ben, who never once said, "That's not true." I don't think he meant to overlook me. I just think it never crossed his mind that I was worth looking closer at. That's the thing about quiet women. We become wallpaper in rooms where people only look for mirrors, but not anymore. Last night, I stood in front of them all and reclaimed my space. Not with anger, not even with pride, just clarity, clean, bright, and absolute. I didn't owe them a performance. I didn't owe them an explanation. I didn't owe them anything. I finished my coffee and walked the grounds with Ethan again, clipboard in hand, noting landscaping updates, staffing needs, supply shipments. Staff nodded respectfully. Guests smiled. No one asked who I was. They already knew. Around noon, the messages started coming in. Lauren. "Hey, can we talk?" Marcus. Didn't realize you were involved. Let's catch up? Even Darlene left a voicemail. Sugary sweet, syrupy with damage control. Nina, she said, using the wrong name at first, then correcting it. Madelyn, honey, I think things just got a little too dramatic last night. Let's not let this become a whole thing. We're family, woman to woman. I know we can work something out. Woman to woman. The same woman who once gave me wrinkle cream as a birthday gift and told me, prevention is key. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I sat in my office, opened my drawer, and pulled out the envelope I had prepared months ago. Inside were emails, complaint logs, and notarized testimonies from 3 employees Darlene had mistreated over the years, 2 housekeepers and an intern she once called an ungrateful brat for not ironing her silk scarf correctly. When she arrived unannounced the next morning, pearls and panic around her neck, I let her talk. She spoke of appearances, of Ben, of legacy, of what people would think. When she finally paused, waiting for me to nod in agreement, I slid the envelope across the desk. You're lucky I believe in resolution, I said. But if this ever becomes public, I have the full press statement ready, not as a threat, just as truth. She left shaking, and I didn't feel triumphant. I felt whole, because power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's a whisper that says, you no longer need permission to exist. And from that moment on, I knew this wasn't just about owning a resort. It was about finally owning myself. 2 days after the reveal, Willow Crest hosted its annual Legacy Guest Appreciation Night, a glittering cocktail event where longtime families gathered to sip champagne and bask in the nostalgia of their own importance. I considered canceling it, but then I realized I didn't have to cancel anything. I could redefine it, so I did. The event space was elegant, lit by soft amber chandeliers and the warm hum of a string quartet. Servers moved between clusters of guests in jewel-toned gowns and tailored blazers. Everyone was talking, but about me, or more accurately, about the idea of me. Who knew? I overheard one guest murmur. I thought she was just quiet. Ben's wife, right? Not anymore. I waited until the room reached its peak chatter, then stepped up to the front, where a screen was waiting behind me. I took the mic, not with ceremony, but purpose. Good evening, I began. Some of you already know me. Some of you thought you did. A few polite laughs, nervous glances. I clicked to the first slide, an aerial rendering of the resort's upcoming expansion, new cabins, a wellness center, a community dock for kayaking programs open to local families. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Then I clicked to the next slide. The funding for these initiatives, I said, will come from the newly launched Reese Women's Fund, a foundation designed to support the children of single mothers working in hospitality, starting right here in Colorado. Darlene straightened in her chair. I paused. And it's named after my mother, Cecilia Reese, a woman who cleaned motel rooms in Oregon for 16 years while raising me alone. She taught me that respect is earned, not inherited, and that legacy isn't about bloodlines, it's about impact. Silence. Tight faces, stiff shoulders, more than one glass of champagne frozen mid-sip. Then came the final slide. In addition, I continued, starting next season, Bluewood Ventures will be reviewing all existing private ownership arrangements, including long-term leases currently under family names. The message couldn't have been clearer if I'd written Caldwell Privileges End Now across the screen in bold red. Ben's uncle's face drained of color. Lauren turned to her husband with frantic eyes. Haley visibly swallowed. They knew. They all knew. They'd built their summer traditions on sweetheart leases, backdoor contracts, and under-the-table deals. And I now controlled every single one of them. Thank you for coming, I said, and handed the mic back to the AV tech. As I stepped down from the platform, Marcus intercepted me, trying to smile. Madelyn, wait, can we talk? Sure, I said, not slowing. Feel free to book a meeting through guest services, just like everyone else. The look on his face was almost worth the years of being invisible, almost, because the real victory wasn't in the shock. It was in the stillness inside me. I no longer needed to raise my voice to be heard, because the room was already listening. 3 mornings after the announcement, I found myself on the dock again. No heels, no clipboard, no speeches to prepare. Just me, a mug of black coffee, and the sound of soft waves brushing against the wood. The lake was perfectly still, so still it felt like it had been holding its breath for years, just like I had. And now, finally, we were both letting it out. I watched the sun crest over the ridge, gold spilling over the trees and setting the water alight. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't thinking about what to say, or how to say it, or how it might be received. I was simply quiet. Not small, not invisible, just still. By noon, my inbox had turned into a war zone. Ben's uncle sent 2 friendly emails asking for an extension on his lease. Lauren forwarded a voice memo where she used the word misunderstanding 5 times in under a minute. And Darlene? She left another voicemail, her voice syrupy and sharp, like she was smiling through a mouthful of splinters. Madelyn, honey, let's not let this get messy. We're family. We can work something out woman to woman. Don't you think you've made your point? The same woman who once asked me, at Thanksgiving, if I'd considered a posture class because engineers tend to hunch. I didn't respond. Instead, I passed her file to my legal team. Quietly. Precisely. No revenge. Just boundaries. We reviewed every cabin lease on record. Lauren had been subletting her unit through a short-term rental app under her husband's name, pocketing over $40,000 in 2 years, without ever reporting a cent of it. We didn't come after the money. We forwarded the records to the state. Ben's uncle? His lease had technically expired 18 months ago. He'd been using handshakes and legacy promises to stay rent-free. We gave him 30 days to vacate, then donated the unit to a nonprofit that hosts retreats for veterans and their families. And Darlene? She came to my office in pearls and desperation, tried to play the matriarch card one last time. I let her talk for 5 minutes, about how this looked, about Ben, about appearances. Then I handed her a folder of signed statements and harassment complaints I'd quietly resolved months ago, from interns, housekeepers, and concierge staff she'd belittled. I've prepared a press statement, I told her, just in case you decide to reposition yourself publicly. It's not a threat, it's simply the truth. She left in silence. That night, Ben and I sat on opposite ends of the couch. He looked at me, not like a stranger, but like someone realizing they never learned the language of the person they married. You never told me, he said. You never asked, I replied. There were tears, there was silence, but no fight. He moved out a week later. We're not enemies, we're just no longer partners, and that hurt less than I thought it would, because I'm no longer chasing acknowledgement, or belonging, or love that has to be earned by shrinking. I own the resort, I own my name, I own the silence I used to fear. The girl who once brought the salad, wore the smile, and cleared the table, she owns the damn table now. And the truth? Sometimes closure doesn't come with an apology, it comes with power. Quiet, steady, earned power. And once you find that in yourself, no one can take it back. Some people don't marry into families, they audition for acceptance. Madelyn stayed silent not because she was weak, but because she was building. Building value, building power, building a life no one could take from her. And one day, she didn't need a seat offered to her anymore. She owned the table. Sometimes you don't need to argue, or prove anything, or wait for an apology. You just need to step into the light and let the truth speak for itself. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, if you've been overlooked because you were quiet, remember this. Silence doesn't mean absence. Keep building, keep growing, and when the time comes, your presence will be impossible to ignore. If this story hit home for you, tap subscribe for more powerful stories like this. And if you have a story of being underestimated, of rising above expectations, of reclaiming your worth, drop it in the comments below. Because someone out there might need your story to start writing their own.